Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if the Uzumaki clan finds Naruto council bashing Harem, part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto sat in his hospital bed looking at the Hokage who was now staring at Naruto in the eyes. He had just been asked to recall everything that had happened. He sat there quietly for a few minutes before he started talking. Well, I woke up really early in the morning, I felt that something wasn't right and I felt alarm bells ringing. I tried to sense what was going on and that was when I felt Hinata-chan's chakra moving. He explained to the aged man. Wait, the Hyuga matriarch said as she looked at Naruto. Yugao and Kakashi's apartment is a sold 5 miles away from the Hyuga compound. How did you know it was even her? Hitomi asked. Well, I remembered her chakra. Naruto explained as he looked at Hitomi. I can do it right now if you don't believe me. Alright, I want everyone in the room to move around and I want Naruto to close his eyes, Sarutobi said as he got up to walk to a corner of the room. After 2 minutes, he had Naruto point to everyone in the room. Hinata-chan is right there. He pointed to Hinata blushed when she said his name so affectionately. Hinata's Ka-chan is right there. He pointed to Hitomi. Weird mystery lady is right there. He pointed to Makoto whose sweat dropped at the nickname. Gigi is right there. He pointed to Sarutobi who smiled warmly. And weird masked guy is right there. He pointed to the ceiling. Everyone in the room froze when a masked Anbu with a blank mask materialized in a position to kill Naruto but was stopped by Sarutobi. The Hokage drew a kunai and threw it. The knife landed in the root member's skull. Luckily, Hinata had her eyes covered by her mother when the mystery figure appeared and Makoto was getting in the stance for a sealess fire justice. Sarutobi looked at Naruto and was shocked to see that he looked perfectly normal. Sorry about that. We have to take out the trash, he said as he signaled for 2 actual Anbu members to come to take away the body. It's okay Gigi. Naruto smiled at the man who just killed someone in front of him. Naru-kun, aren't you a little scared about what you just saw? Makoto asked the child who shook his head. Nah. When you've seen a giant tiger rip the head off of 3 small baby boars because of land disputes, you learn to live with death and blood, Naruto explained, which surprisingly got a nod from Hiruzen. I understand Naruto, though it is a little worrying that you're so used to seeing killings and blood for someone your age. I understand Gigi, Naruto replied, albeit a little quieter. Anyway, when I sensed that Hinata-chan was in danger I quietly grabbed Nei-chan's pouches and ran to Hinata. After I got there I stopped the guy who then threw stuff at me. Where did you learn how to dodge Naru-kun? Sarutobi asked after he silently put up a silencing barrier. Well, some of the monkeys and foxes in the forest would throw stuff at me for fun. If I dodged them I got fruit, if I didn't, well they would dunk me in the lake. Naruto said as he shivered thinking about all the times he got dunked in the lake. How did you get them to do this? Makoto asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, I talked to them. Naruto replied like it was the simplest thing in the world. You talk to them? Hitomi asked with just as much skepticism as Makoto had. Naru-kun, you can tell them about your mother, Sarutobi said, which made Naruto's head turn dangerously towards the old man. How do you know about her? Naruto asked the man. Meanwhile, inside Naruto's head, Akari would also like to know how the old man knew she was talking to him. Must have been Kakashi and Yugao. She figured as she continued to watch how the scene would play out. Your siblings told me about her, he said with a kind smile. Alright, well, I have a giant fox that lives in my tummy. Naruto blurted out, which made Makoto and Hitomi's eyes widen in fear. So you know about the fox? Hitomi asked Naruto, who shook his head in an affirmative manner. Yeah. She's really nice and talks to me all the time. Except for right now. What do you mean, Naru-kun? I'm just listening to what's going on, she said with a smile on her face as she poked Mito to say something. Yes, it is quite interesting to hear this conversation, Guppy, the elder Uzumaki said with a smile. On the outside, Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion as he heard the new voice in his head. Who are you? He asked the new voice in his head, and who laughed in return. Who, me? Well, I am your distant relative, she said, as she didn't want to give away her relationship to the boy until he figured out who his parents were. Naruto-kun, everything okay? Sarutobi asked the boy, who nodded his head. Oh yeah, everything is fine. Ka-chan was just talking to me about something, Naruto explained to the man who nodded his head. Wait, you have a giant fox in your head? Hinata asked, which made all the adults' eyes widen. Yeah, well, I think she said that she's actually in a seal on my tummy, Naruto explained as he lifted up his shirt to show Hinata the seal. She walked over and poked it, which made Naruto giggle. Wait, if there's a giant fox in there, how does it fit? Hinata asked, which made all the adults sweat drop. I don't know, Naruto replied with a shrug of his shoulders. So you don't dislike Naruto because he has a giant fox in his tummy? Sarutobi hesitantly asked the small child, who shook her head. Naruto-kun is my first friend, she said happily. I'm not giving that up because he has a fox Ka-chan that lives in his tummy and talks in his head, Hinata said with a smile on her face, which made everyone else smile as well. Naruto's seal. Mito looked over at Akari, who was whipping a tear from her eye. She smiled at the sight and leaned over to hug her. That was really special, wasn't it, Akari-chan? Yeah, she said as she sniffles a little. It really was. Is she? Mito looked at Akari, who nodded her head. She's his other half. He can't tell, but her chakrak is synced in perfect harmony with his. She explained to the Uzumaki, who smiled. Just like me and Hashi-kun, she whispered. Yeah, Kami said as she thought about a certain white-haired supreme goddess. Naruto's hospital room. All the adults looked at Hinata with wide smiles that were full of pride. Hitomi grabbed her daughter and hugged her tightly. Makoto looked at Naruto, who was a little jealous of the affection, and went to give him a hug as well. After a few minutes of hugging, Naruto continued with his story of how the night offered. He talked about how he talked to the ninja and how they both launched attacks at the other. Wait, how many jutsu do you know? Makoto asked the boy, who sheepishly scratched the back of his head. He then went on to explain all the jutsu that he knew, which brought wide eyes to both Makoto and Hitomi. Sarutobi already knew all this information, so he didn't show any reaction. After that small setback, Naruto continued with his fight with the Kumo Chunin. He explained how he walked on the walls to avoid getting hit by lightning, how he set up an earth wall so that he could get Hinata out of the bag, and finally how he used shadow clones so that he could make a combination attack with his wind and 2 fire jutsu. Thank you, Naru-kun, that makes all of this a lot easier for me to deal with, Sarutobi said with a smile on his face. Now can you answer my questions? Naruto asked the man, who nodded his head. Cool. Who is she? He points to Makoto, who smiles brightly. Naru-chan, my name is Makoto Uchiha. I will be training you for the time being when you aren't with the Hyugas or your siblings, she said warmly as she wrapped Naruto into another hug. His head was right where he wanted it to be, right in the middle of the Uchiha's chest. After a few moments of pure bliss for the boy, Makoto let him go and went to sit down in her chair. She then smiled at him and went to ask him some questions of her own. Now, Naru-chan, have you noticed anything different with your eyes recently? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. Hi, I can see in the dark, and I can see really clearly, and I can see really far too, he explained, which made Hitomi curious. Hokage same, could this be a byproduct of Naruto being a Jinchuriki? She tried to ask the man quietly, but Naruto still heard it. Gigi, what's a Jinchuriki? The boy asked, which made everyone in the room sweat drop. You mean a Jinchuriki, Naruto? The literal definition of the word means human sacrifice, but really what it means is that you house what is a tailed beast, which are better known as demons. You house the nine-tailed demon fox, which is known to be the strongest of the nine-tailed beasts. Sarutobi explained. Naruto, I want you to know that what the old man is true, but also that we aren't demons, we are spirits and are greatly misunderstood, Akari said in a soft voice in his mind. I know Ka-chan, you're a nice person and I'm gonna make people change their minds about you. Hinata-chan doesn't mind you. You'll see I'm gonna do it, I promise, and I've never broken a promise yet. Naruto thought in his head, which made Akari smile brightly. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto smiled as he felt his mother's warmth spread through his body. He hugged his body and nuzzled his head into his chest. Naruto, are you okay? Sarutobi asked cautiously. He didn't know how the child would react to being told this information. What? Oh, I'm perfectly fine, he said with a smile on his face. What about you, Hinata? Hitomi asked the girl, who shrugged her shoulders. Naruto-kun saved me from meanings, he's not a demon. And I don't think his Ka-chan is one either. People are just mean. Hinata said, which once again made everyone smile. Alright, well, back to the topic we were originally talking about. Naruto-kun, your eyes, did you notice anything different about them? Makoto asked the child, who shook his head with a frown on his face. No, I mean things got slower and turned black and white, but other than that nothing, Naruto explained, which made Makoto smile. That's exactly what I was looking for. Do you think you could try to make the same thing happen again? She asked the child, which made him shrug his shoulders. That's okay, I'm gonna help you, all you have to do is channel chakra into your eyes. Okay, sounds pretty easy. Naruto did as he was told and found that his vision became slightly slower, but this time he could see in full color, though now he could see that there were small balls of fire in everyone's stomachs. Wow, this is really cool. Everyone looked at Naruto's Sharingan and noticed that it was one tome in his right eye and two in his left. Makoto and Hinata were in awe of the boy's eyes, and Sarutobi smiled fondly. Wow, Ka-chan, can I do that? Hinata asked her mother, who smiled but shook her head. I'm sorry, sweetie, but even if you tried, I don't think it would work. You only unlocked your chakra yesterday. Hitomi said to her daughter, who looked down in disappointment. You have to let her at least try, Naruto said as he looked at how much chakra Hinata had. She actually had a lot for her age. She had about 2/3 what Naruto had. Alright, I guess we can try, Hitomi sighed as she sat down in front of her daughter. All you have to do is 6 hand signs. They are rat, dog, lightning, rat, and ram. She said as she demonstrated them. After that, all you have to do is channel chakra to your eyes and say, Byakugan. You are very young, Hinata, and even prodigies don't unlock these eyes at the age of 4 inches, she explained. Hinata looked at her mother and then at Naruto. She saw him smile at her and hold his thumb up. You can do it, Hinata-chan. He yelled as he smiled at her. I believe in you. I can do this. Naruto-kun believes in me. I can't let him down. She thought to herself as she slowly did the hand signs. Once she finished the hand signs, she took a deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, Byakugan. 1. Suddenly veins started protruding on her face and her eyes looked slightly different. Hinata looked around and noticed that she could see almost 360 degrees. She smiled to herself as she almost fell down due to exhaustion. I did it, she said as she leaned on Naruto's bed for support. Yeah, Naruto said as he looked at her and smiled. You did great. Hitomi was speechless. Never before in the history of her entire clan had she heard of someone unlocking the Byakugan before at the age of 4. Not only that, but she could do it on her first try. She didn't know what to do. If she told Hiyashi, she would be starting training immediately and wouldn't be able to have a normal childhood. Sarutobi was equally amazed. He has been alive for a long time. He was 71 years old and had seen a lot. Never would he have ever imagined that he would be in the same room as someone who unlocked the Sharingan, but also the Byakugan. Both of them being children and both of them not even in the academy. Well, We definitely have some talented children in our midst. He thought to himself as he glanced at Makoto, who looked like she was about to faint. Well, that was unexpected, the aged man finally said with a chuckle. This could be huge for the village. Both parents looked at the man like he was insane. Makoto instantly moved to Naruto's side and placed his head close to her chest. Hitomo immediately put Hinata behind her and glared at the man. And what do you mean by that? Makoto asked through a clenched jaw. Well, what I mean is that we have two very young and very powerful ninjas in our midst. He said cryptically. Cut the shit, what do you really mean? Hitomi asked as she then activated her Byakugan. Makoto wasn't too far behind as she also activated her Sharingan. Sarutobi sighed and sat back down in his chair. He rubbed his face into his palms and groaned. The village is being seen as weak throughout the elemental nations. Okay, but what does that have anything to do with Naruto and Hinata? Makoto asked as she pulled a stool over to Naruto's bedside as he was very content with staying in her bosom. Alright, Iwa and Kumo are getting antsy. We just lost the Yondaime, Red Death 2, a quarter of our Anbu and Elite Junin, and we haven't had any of our genin reach the final rounds of the past 5 Chunin exams. He said in a grave tone. Like I said, what does that have anything to do with these children? Makoto asked again, her Sharingan spinning dangerously fast. We need to look strong, we need to avoid another war. If we got into another war, he purposely trailed off his thoughts so that the two mothers could understand what he was saying. You're saying that you want them to become shinobi so that you can increase the village's standing? Hitomi asked the man, who nodded his head slowly. Are you out of your kami-forsaken mind? Makoto yelled, which made everyone wince a little. Hey, if you want to take this damn hat from me, then by all means. Sarutobi fired back at the Uchiha, who shut her mouth but still glared at him. We don't have any other choice. We can't go to war or else we will all die. I can't let that happen. Those two could very well be our only hopes. He yelled as he rubbed his temples with his index fingers. All fight. Everyone in the room looked at Naruto like he had 5 heads. He had turned off his Sharingan to conserve energy and was now looking at the 3 adults with a serious expression on his face. Naru-chan, I don't think you know what we're talking about, Hitomi said in as calm a voice she could muster at the moment. Alright, let's see if I understand. These other villages think that our village is weak. Kind of like a group of foxes without a mother, the other villages being coyotes or wolves. The wolves think that the foxes are weak and so they are going to kill them. But if strong fox babies appear, it will make the wolves and coyotes think that the rest of the foxes, kids are strong, so they will get scared and leave. Is that what's going on right now? He asked the now wide-eyed adults. His tactical thinking and analytical skills are amazing. He's 4 and did a better job than most of our genin or chunin could ever do. Sarutobi thought to himself as he looked at his grandson. Yes, that's exactly what's going on. Alright, well, when I was in that forest, the number one thing the foxes taught me was to never abandon your pack. The village may hate me, but I can't abandon them. They are like my pack. So I'll train and train till I can protect them. I'll protect them all and I'll protect Hinata-chan. I won't abandon my own. I won't abandon my friends, and I won't abandon this village. Naruto said with determination and fire that was unheard of in a 4-year-old. He looked at Sarutobi with a fire in his eyes that burned bright with grit and willpower. If Naruto-kun is doing it, then so am I. Hinata said as she scooted from behind her mother. Ka-chan told me to never ditch your friends. Naruto-kun is my only friend and I'm not going to leave him. I'll train with him. I'll learn with him. We do this together. No matter what. The young, usually timid girl shouted. She too had a fire in her eyes that showed how serious she was. Hinata-chan, you didn't stutter. 3. Naruto said with a big smile on his face. Hinata immediately started blushing and pushing her fingers together. She looked at her friend and smiled at him. Both grinned at each other and looked at Sarutobi, who was now looking at Hitomi and Makoto. After 10 minutes of tense silence, Hitomi signed to herself and rubbed her face. Say we did agree to this, how long would we have to get them to genin level? She asked the aged man. Since it's January now, the next exams are in Suna in March. They definitely wouldn't be ready by then. The exams after that are being held in Kiri in August. That gives you both 8 months to get them to Chunin level. Sarutobi explained to the two women. 8 months. Both Hitomi and Makoto yelled at the man who sighed. Naruto, how many clones can you make? Sarutobi asked the child who looked at him funny. Tell him 250, Akari said to the child in his head. She said I could make around 250, he replied, which made everyone in the room's eyes widen. Tell them that I can also sense Hinata's chakra density and that she can make 165 clones. She said to the boy. Ka-chan said that Hinata-chan could make 165 clones due to how naturally denser her chakra is. Hitomi was shocked that her daughter could make so many. It was a little known fact about the shadow clone jutsu, but it didn't matter how much chakra you had. It was a matter of how dense it was. The denser the chakra, the more close you could make with the same amount of chakra. 4. Wow, I can only make like 3 or 4, Hitomi said in shock at the revelation. I can make maybe 5 at the maximum, Makoto chimed in as she looked at the pair. I can make 25, but then I need to go to the hospital. To think that these two have that dense chakra at such a young age is incredible. The last people I knew that had this dense chakra were Hashirama-sama and Mito-sama. Sarutobi explained to the occupants of the room. Well, if you take into consideration that the caster gains everything that the clone learns and experiences, we could actually get them both the Chunin in 8 months, Makoto said as she looked at Naruto with a smirk. So are you both going to do it? Sarutobi asked with a face of pure hope. Hitomi sighed to herself and groaned. Yes, I'll train Hinata and I'll help train Naruto as well. We will follow the schedule that we came up with. Perfect. I can have them take the genin exams in 5 months. And since Yugao and Kakashi aren't here, it would usually be the Hoiga who take care of Naruto, but Yugao said that Makoto could stay in the guest room with Naruto. Sarutobi said. Both Hitomi and Makoto nodded their heads and bowed. Hitomi thanked the Hokage for letting her see Naruto and told Hinata to say her goodbyes. Both hugged each other and then the Hyugas left the hospital room. While all this was happening, Hiruzen was thinking to himself about the training that Naruto and Hinata were going to undertake. I need to make it up to Naruto, but how? He has his clones, that's it. I'll take a few of his clones and teach him how to be Hokage. I'll teach him politics and the importance of how to run the village. I can even make him my apprentice and teach him everything I know. After what I heard today, he'll make a fantastic Hokage. The will of fire burns bright in him. Hokage-sama, is there anything else you need to talk to us about? Makoto asked the aged man who was seemingly lost in thought. Ah, yes, there was one thing. He walked over to Naruto and sat on his bed. Naruto, I have a proposition for you. Okay. Naruto looked at the man and he smiled at him. Do you know what the will of fire is? Sarutobi asked the child. No. What is it, Gigi? The will of fire is the belief that the entire village is a family. It means that everyone is connected like a tree. The villagers are the leaves, the shinobi are the bark, and the Hokage is the trunk. The Hokage is in charge of the village and has to make sure that everyone is safe. From the villagers to the shinobi, they make sure that from the smallest leaf to the thickest piece of bark is protected. He explained to the child who was looking at him with wide eyes. Wow, I want to be the trunk. I want to be Hokage. Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Makoto was looking at Naruto and remembering another blonde child she remembered saying those exact same words. She could swear that she saw an overlay of Minato on top of Naruto as he said those words. Wherever you are Minato-kun, you would be so proud of him. She thought to herself and she whipped a tear from her eyes. I'm glad you want to be Hokage, Naruto, but there's a lot you need to know if you want to be Hokage. That's why I'm asking if you would like to become my apprentice. Makoto's eyes widened as she heard the request from Sarutobi. She knew that if Naruto became the Hokage's apprentice that he would basically be grooming the child for the hat. She didn't know whether to be happy about that or to wonder what Sarutobi saw in him. Sure, he had potential. Mountains of potential, but to groom him when he's 4. She didn't know. So she watched how the scene was going to play out. Is that like your student? Naruto asked with wide eyes. Yes, I would teach you the ins and outs of Konoha's laws, the shinobi world, the nations, and how to be Hokage. He explained to the child. Ah, I see, so he's not going to teach him jutsus or fighting. He's just going to teach him politics and leave the heavy stuff to me, Kakashi, and Yugao. Makoto thought to herself as she watched Naruto accept the offer. Sarutobi was overjoyed that he was going to get a student like Naruto. He saw the fire in his eyes that day and knew that he was Hokage material. Now all he had to do was teach him and train him. Well, Naruto, I've kept you here long enough. The doctors said that you could leave as soon as you woke up. Hiruzen said as he watched the boy hop out of his hospital bed. Alright Naru-chan, let's get you home and ready for bed. You've had a very long day and I can tell you're tired. Makoto said in a sweet voice as she picked up the now half-asleep Naruto. She looked at the Hokage who smiled at her and then shunshined back to Kakashi and Yugao's apartment. She made them both sandwiches for dinner and sent Naruto off to bed. After a few hours of reading, she walked to the guest room to see Naruto fast asleep. She changed into sleep clothing that she had brought with her in a scroll and sank into the bed. Naruto instinctively went and cuddled up to her chest and she smiled. You Naruto, she whispered as she stroked his head. You are going to be a legend one day. She kissed his forehead and went to sleep. It was dark when Naruto woke up. He looked around and it was dark outside. He also felt that his arms were wrapped around him and he heard a heart beating. Is someone holding me? He looked down and saw that it was that same lady from the day before. Wait, he remembered that she was named Makoto and that she would be training him. He then took the opportunity to look around. His brain was telling him that it was early morning, but he found that he could see perfectly in the dark environment he was in. He then tried to channel chakra to his eyes and found that they now had an eerie red glow. Naruto turned to find a mirror and saw his eyes and smiled. They had one spinning tome in the right eye and two in his left. He got up and walked closer and smiled. This is so cool. After a few minutes of looking at his eyes, he decided that it was time for him to get up fully. He looked around and found the door. Not wanting to wake up Makoto, he silently crept around the room and exited it. I need to get clean, but there isn't a stream nearby. So what am I supposed to do? He asked himself quietly as he stood in the middle of the hallway. Well, you need to take a bath, Guppy. Naruto, who by this point wasn't startled by the voices in his head, just stood there confused. I'm sorry. Do I know you? He asked the voice. Oh, that's right. I don't think I've properly introduced myself yet. My name is Mito Uzumaki. I am your great ancestor from many years ago. The elder clan head said, albeit it vaguely. So you're like my Ba-chan? He asked the now identified Mito who was smiling in his head. Mito, who hadn't heard someone call her that in many years, was absolutely beaming. I'm technically his great-grandmother, but I don't think he's going to be meeting Tsunade anytime soon, so I'll take the title. Mito thought was an evil smirk. Yes, you may call me Ba-chan. She said to the young boy. Alright, is Ka-chan still asleep? He asked as he found the bathroom and walked in. He looked around the bathroom and found an orange towel and washcloth. Yes, my guppy, and I can help you learn how to properly wash yourself. She said in a smooth voice. Okay, he said as he closed the door. After 35 minutes, and a very interesting conversion with his new grandmother figure, Naruto was clean, had his teeth brushed, and even learned how to clean the bathroom. He found out that he now loved taking hot bubble baths, but he didn't enjoy the tediousness of having to use the shower to rinse himself off afterward. Mito explained to him the importance of proper hygiene and what happens if it's kept at an adequate level. Wow, I had to shower with Su-chan when she was this age. The fact that he can do it by himself is incredible. She thought to herself as she made a cup of coffee in the seal. Once Naruto dried himself off with the towel that was hanging on the rack, he walked back to what he assumed was his room since it was painted orange. He looked at his bed and found Makoto still asleep. He then looked at the digital clock on the wall that read 5:30 a.m. Wow, I guess this is the time I woke up in the cave. He thought to himself as he tried to find some clothing. He eventually found a pair of black pants and a red shirt with a spiral on it. He looked at himself in the mirror and smiled. He then took one last look at Makoto, who was still asleep, and then left the room to make breakfast. Makoto woke up slowly. She looked around and found that he was in an unfamiliar palace. She sat up on the bed and realized that she was in Naruto's bedroom. However, she immediately realized that one thing was missing: Naruto. She immediately kicked off the blanket and sheets and ran out of the room. Naruto? She asked as she made her way down the hallway. She then smelt something coming from the kitchen and realized that he was cooking breakfast. Wait, he knows how to cook. She asked herself as she saw the small boy using a clone as a step stool. I need you to stay still, he yelled as he stood up to flip something in a pan. You try being a step stool, the clone yelled back as it looked down at the wood floor. I didn't want to be a stool, so that's why I made you, Naruto yelled back. Makoto would have laughed at the funny conversation that the boy was having with his clone if it weren't for the fact that he was cooking food on a stove while standing on another person. She quickly ran to the stove to look at what he was doing and was shocked at what she found. Naruto was cooking sunny-side-up eggs on one side of a skillet and stirps of what she assumed was bacon on the other side. How the fuck can he do that? She internally thought. Good morning, Naruto said to Makoto, who looked at him with a smile. I thought I could cook breakfast for you, he said as he moved the bacon so it wouldn't burn. Makoto, who was still in shock, simply nodded her head and went to sit at the table. After a few minutes, Naruto asked for some help. She quickly went over to see what he asked. Do you know where the plates are? I'm very small so I can't reach the other high places, he explained to the mother, who nodded her head. Sure, sweetie, she said with a smile as she started opening cabinets. After a few minutes of searching, she pulled out 2 plates and set them down on the counter. Would you like me to help you put the food on the plates? She asked. While Makoto was a mother, she didn't get to help her children as often as she liked. Naruto, who sensed the slight emotional change in Makoto, looked at her strangely for a second. He then shrugged his shoulders and nodded his head. At this action, he felt her chakra ease back to normal and smiled. Makoto then placed the bacon and eggs on the plates and moved them to the table. She then realized that it was dark in the room and went to turn on the lights. How can he see like this? I had to strain to see what I was doing, she wondered to herself. Naruto then sat down and waited for Makoto to join him. When she did, he immediately started to eat but was stopped by Makoto's harsh glare. He looked at her confused and tilted his head. What's wrong? He asked the older women. Well, there are a few things. First, you didn't give thanks for the food. Second, you are eating way too fast, she explained to the boy. Oh, he said quietly. I'm sorry, he tilted his head down. It's okay, sweetie. No one was there to teach you, Makoto said kindly. I'm glad I can still mother someone. Doesn't look like I'm having any more kids anytime soon, she somberly thought to herself. What's wrong? Makoto snapped out of her thoughts when she heard the boy ask her that. She then steeled her emotions and smiled at him. Nothing is wrong, sweetie, she said with a smile. Guppy, don't push her on this. If her husband is who I think he is, then he's not that nice. Just say okay and eat, Mito said to the child, who internally nodded his head. Oh, I thought that you were sad for a second, but I was mistaken, Naruto explained as he sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Wow, I slipped for a second and he caught me red-handed. He is a fantastic censor. I need to watch myself around him. Though it would be nice to talk to an unbiased source. She thought to herself as she remembered what she was going to be doing. Alright Naru-kun, before you eat every meal you have, you always want to give thanks. She explained to the boy who looked at her with his undivided attention. First you have to put your hands together in front of you, she explained the action while doing it so that Naruto could mimic it. Then you bow your head, close your eyes, and say, "Itadakimasu," she said as she did what she said. "Itadakimasu," he said with a wide smile on his face. "Itadakimasu," she said as she opened her eyes and started to eat the food that Naruto cooked. After a few minutes, she decided to try and get to know her godson. "So, who taught you how to cook?" she asked the child. "Well, when I was in my cave I had to eat. So Ka-chan taught me how to hunt and cook," he explained, which made Makoto's eyes widen. "Ka-chan would wake me up every morning at daybreak and we would hunt for food. Sometimes I had leftover meat from the night before, but usually, I just got fresh meat and eggs," he said in between bites. "How did you learn to cook eggs? I didn't think there were many ways to get them in the forest of death," she asked the child who smiled at her. "Well, there aren't any. Or at least not chicken. It's chicken honey," Makoto corrected him with a giggle. "Well, I had to ask around a bunch of snakes and birds. I only got 2 a day from like 20 birds and snakes. They said that I had to bring them food and protect their nests and burrows. Even then I ate them rarely. I've only had them like 20 times in a year," Naruto explained to Makoto, who nodded her head. "You can talk to animals?" she asked the boy who nodded his head. "Yeah, Ka-chan wanted me to be able to talk to them. I can talk to everyone, though the bigger animals don't like to say much," he said with a slight frown. "What animals have you talked to?" she asked as she took another bite. "Well, a lot of snakes and birds, foxes, deer, a llama, a tiger, a lion and his family, and some others. Most of the bigger animals only wanted to explain what territory was there and where I could and couldn't hurt. There were areas in the forest where I could eat what I hunted and areas I couldn't hunt because they had staked their claim already," He said to the woman who nodded her head. "Sometimes the foxes and deer brought me their kids so that I could play with them. I even babysit for food." "Really?" Makoto asked, intrigued that animals would trust their young with a 4-year-old. "Yeah, do you want to meet some of the foxes?" he asked with stares in his eyes. This caught Makoto's attention. She raised an eyebrow and looked at the boy with intrigue written on her face. "Does he have a summons?" she asked herself. "Sure, I want to meet them," she said with enthusiasm. "Okay." He jumped from his chair and went to the middle of the floor. He then bit his thumb, went through 5 hand signs landings on the ram sign, and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning Jutsu. Kitsune. Suddenly a large poof was heard and smoke appeared in the room. When the smoke lifted, there was a small orange fox with white tips on his ears. He looked around and looked at Naruto confused. "This isn't the cave," he said to the boy who shook his head. "Nope, this is my new house. Well, it's an apartment, but I live here now, Donnie," Naruto shouted with a wide smile on his face. "Huh, it looked nice, Ni-chan, but who's the lady?" "She looks nice," the young fox asked as he went up to sniff Makoto. "I'm Makoto and I'm Naruto's godmother. I am also going to be training him," she said to the fox who yipped. "Okay, though you might want to talk to Ka-chan, she wants to see when you are free to babysit. Also some of the other foxes also want to know when you can babysit." Donnie told both Makoto and Naruto, who nodded their heads. "I understand. Being a mother myself, I sometimes have to have a babysitter come to watch my kids," she said with an understanding smile. "Wait, I thought Naruto was your kid?" Donnie asked, which made Naruto blush. No, Makoto said with her own blush on her face. "Though I wish he were. He's so nice and cute," He's my godson, which means that if something happens to his parents or guardians, I take care of him. She explained to the fox, who nodded its head again. Oh, okay, so his guardians aren't here? He asked, to which Makoto nodded her head. They are out on a mission, so I'm here to train little Naruto here. She said with a smile. Okay. Have fun, dude. Summon Ka-chan at some point. Like I said, she wants to see when you can babysit so she can tell the rest of the clan. See you later, Ni-chan. With that, Donnie puffed back home and left a cloud of smoke in his absence. Wow, so you babysit for the foxes and the kitsunes? Makoto asked the boy with surprise on her face. Yup. They have a lot of meetings and kits, so the parents bring them here and I watch them while I train with Ka-chan. Sometimes we go to the lake to have fun in the water. Naruto explained as he put his now totally finished breakfast plate in the sink. Interesting, so he's responsible enough to not only have a summon contract, but they even let him watch their kids. Naruto, you are not your average child. She thought to herself as she did the dishes. After 20 minutes, they were ready to head to a training ground to start training. Makoto has changed into a black shirt and leggings. 2. She slipped on her open-toed shoes and walked with Naruto to training ground 23. Alright Naruto, we are going to start your training, she said, which got a smile out of the boy. Alright Datbeo, he yelled as he made Makoto giggle a little bit. Yes, but first we have to warm up and stretch, she said as she spread her legs shoulder length apart. Naruto mimicked this motion and began to stretch his legs and hips. They went through all kinds of different stretches and even some yoga poses. Naruto was naturally really flexible thanks to his training with Akari for a year. After 20 minutes of stretches, Makoto sent him off to start running around the training ground. She figured that since all training grounds were 1 square mile in size, she could have him run around it 4 times. Thinking that he was a normal child, he would be done by mid-morning. Naruto, however, had other plans. Since Akari has been training his body for a year, he was a very fit 4-year-old. He was used to running large distances at one time and was able to complete the 4-mile run in a little over 50 minutes. This made Makoto's eyes widen. He just ran 4 miles in under an hour. That's like 4 11 or 12-minute miles. Holy shit, Kyuubi, what have you been training him for? She thought as she looked at a not even winded Naruto. Was that it? He asked the woman, who was now even more in shock. He's asking for more. She then smirked as she remembered some of the notes that Minato left for her. She dug in her bag and found a brush and ink. Lay on your back and take off your shirt, sweetie. Naruto did as he was told and Makoto went to apply the resistance and gravity seals to the boy. She figured that since his chakra was already activated, and he was getting a healthy diet, nothing bad would happen to him. I need to apply these to Hinata as well. We can't let him get too ahead of her, she thought as she applied the seals. After a few minutes of concentration, Makoto had finished applying the seals to Naruto. She looked them over and said, Fuin. Suddenly all the black squiggles and kanji on Naruto started to glow, and after a few seconds, they stopped and faded. Wow, this is weird. I feel really heavy all of the sudden, he said as he stood up to test his movements. That's because I applied seals to make you feel heavier. They will make you faster and stronger, Makoto explained to the child, who nodded his head. I wonder if I'll learn how to do that, he asked himself as he got ready to continue training. Yes, my little guppy, I was the greatest seal master in the world when I was alive. I will teach you everything I know, Mito said with a large smile on her face. She was looking forward to teaching Naruto sealing because she knew that he would take to it like a fish taking to water. Okay, Ba-chan, oh, is Ka-chan awake yet? He asked his grandmother, who replied with the negative. No, she is not, though I would let her sleep in for a while. I don't think she's gotten a good night's sleep in a few days, she explained, which made Naruto nod his head in acceptance of the answer. Okay, I'm sure she'll tell me when she will wake up, he said as he continued to test how well his limbs moved with the seals. Alright Naruto, we're going to have a spar, but first I want you to make your clones. I'm going to assign them tasks for them to complete. Makoto said with a smile. Naruto then went to create 250 clones of himself. Makoto separated 5 for Sarutobi since he knew that he wanted to train with Naruto. She then sent 5 to the library to start reading books on tactics and cooking. She made 40 of them do the tree walking exercise, another 40 do the leaf balancing exercise, and 40 do water walking. She then brought out 5 different scrolls and placed them on the ground. Alright, I have here 5 different scrolls that contain elemental jutsu. I want 5 groups of 24 clones for each scroll. This will be our morning routine for the next 6 months. After that, we will be doing training exercises with Hinata to build up your teamwork. Makoto explained to Naruto, who nodded his head. You heard her, boys. I want one clone to be in charge of the groups to keep them on track. Naruto shouted to his clones, who shouted, "Hi." One clone from each group grabbed a scroll and went to different parts of the training ground. Once all the clones were divided out, Naruto looked at Makoto, who was smiling at him. Now it's time for our spar, she said as she took off her shirt, which revealed a red and black sports bra. What taijutsu do you know? It's okay if you don't know any. She asked. Guppy, your Ka-chan left me with some instructions as to what to tell her. She said that your taijutsu style is the flying fox style, and that you know half the katas for it. She also asks that your teacher teaches you the intercept fist and the hummingbird style. Mito read from a paper in front of her on the couch in the seal. Okay, Ba-chan. Naruto said in his head. Makoto Ka-chan. Ka-chan said that my taijutsu style was the flying fox style. She also asks for you to teach me the intercept first and hummingbird styles. Naruto said to his new mother figure. Makoto was speechless at what Naruto just said. He had just called her Ka-chan, albeit in a strange way. She was over the moon to have someone call her that again. Itachi was always training her with his father and Sasuke, well, he wanted nothing to do with her. He favored hanging out with the cooler Uchihas that lived in the compound. 3. She was over the moon to have Naruto call her that. Though she was a little worried about the fact that he called her it so fast. He must have attachment issues. Though it does make sense with the neglect that he experienced. 4. I need to make sure he's okay. Maybe a trip to Inochi won't be so bad. She thought to herself as she then thought about the other things he said. So the intercept fist, no doubt that's for the Sharingan, but why the hummingbird? From what I can tell, his body isn't the right build for it. Then again, he is built like a more toned Minato. She stroked her chin in thought and smiled. Alright, it looks like we have our work cut out for us. Hi, Naruto yelled as he ran at Makoto to start their spar. Hokage Tower. Mayumi Tatsumi was having a good morning. Her husband had given her a nice breakfast, she was able to get to work on time, and even got a smile from the Hokage when she went to give him his favorite item in the world, paperwork. She was sitting at her desk reading the latest issue of Shinobi Weekly when she heard a commotion coming from the hallway. She looked at the schedule for the Hokage and saw that there wasn't anyone supposed to meet with the man until lunch. What could be going on? She thought to herself as she prepared for whatever was going to be coming her way in the next few minutes. And come it did, in the form of 5 hyperactive 4-year-olds. They all looked the same and were wearing the same clothing. She blinked a few times when they all waited at her desk. After a few seconds passed, she asked the question that was burning in her mind. Naruto-kun, why are there 5 of you? She asked the small child who grinned at her. Mayumi had known Naruto since he was a baby and was one of the few people who knew where he was for a year. Mayumi-chan, I'm Gigi's apprentice. The child said with a big smile on his face. Sweetie, you mean apprentice, and that's awesome. If you want to go in, he's at his desk doing paperwork. She said to the child, who nodded his head and ran into the room. Gigi. All 5 Narutos said at the top of their lungs as they entered the office. It was a small round room that had 2 doors and a closet. There were 3 large bookshelves on both sides of the room. They were stuffed with books and scrolls. There were a few chairs in front of the large wooden desk in the front of the room. Behind the desk was a large glass window that showed the Konoha skyline. At the back of the room were 4 large portraits. The first one was a man with brown hair and tan skin who was wearing red armor. The second picture was of a man wearing blue armor and a gray face protector. He had red markings on his pale face and had red eyes with gray hair. The third picture was of a younger Sarutobi, so Naruto didn't spend much time on it. The fourth picture was of a man who looked strangely like Naruto. He had bright spiky yellow hair, blue eyes, and tan skin. Sarutobi looked up from his paperwork and nearly yelped when he saw 5 Narutos in his office. He then remembered that the boy was now his apprentice and that he was going to be here every day. "Naruto, my boy, how are you doing?" he asked the small child who was now looking around the room. "I'm good. Makoto-chan told me to come here with my clones," he explained as he walked around the room. He then stopped at the photos and looked at them. "Hey Gigi, who are these guys? The second one looks really cool," he said to the aged leader who laughed at the statement. Inside of his head, however, Mito was cackling like a hyena. "Ha ha ha ha, he likes Tobirama-kun more than Hashirama-kun. Ha 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 ha." She laughed, which made Naruto internally sweat drop. These Naruto are the previous Hokage. The first one is Hashirama Senju. He founded the village with his friend Madara, but they got into a fight and Madara had to leave. He died during the First Great Ninja War. The second one is Tobirama Senju. He was Hashirama's younger brother and was the second Hokage. He created things like the academy, taxes, hundreds of jutsus, built the stadium and created many of the laws in the village today. What made all this more impressive was that he did this during wartime. He died protecting me and my team during the same war as his brother. The third one is me. I took over when Tobirama made me Hokage before he died. I then ended the First Great Ninja War and led during the Second and Third Great Ninja Wars. I did a lot of things which we can talk about later. The last picture is of Minato Namikaze. He was my successor but unfortunately died 4 years ago during the Kyuubi attack. He died sealing the Kyuubi into you. Sarutobi explained to the boy who was fascinated by the previous Hokages. He was especially fascinated by Tobirama. "Wow, that's really cool Gigi, do you know anything about this Tobirama guy? He sounds really cool," Naruto asked as the other clones in the room nodded their heads in agreement. "Huh, never would have thought he would like Tobirama-sensei. I thought he would go straight for his dad. Oh well, I'm sure Minato will understand." "Yes, I do. In fact, I was his student so I know all about him. He even wrote many books about his life and about other things," he said as he went to the bookshelf to pick out a few books written by Tobirama. He then placed them on the desk and sealed them into a scroll. "You can take these with you at the end of the day," Sarutobi explained to the clones who nodded their heads. "Now, it's time for you to become my apprentice and learn the ins and outs of this job. The first thing is, Hiruzen, I need to. Demon, what are you doing in this office?" An old man with bandages wrapped around his left arm yelled as he pointed his cane at Naruto. Naruto immediately sensed the negative energy coming off of the man, snarled at him, and spoke with a dark tone. "Gigi, I thought we left the corpses in the morgue to rot." Sarutobi was doing his best not to laugh at what Naruto said and steeled his facial expressions. "Danzo, I will have you know that you are not to barge into this office whenever you feel like it. Also, it would be good for your health if you remembered the law I passed 4 years ago." He shouted at the advisor who rolled his eyes. "I was only coming to ask why you let an animal into the sacred office of Hokage." Danzo sneered. "Last time I checked, the garbage wasn't supposed to be here either. If you are looking for the drop-off point, it's out back." Naruto fired back at the Warhawk who glared at the boy even harder. This time Sarutobi along with his Anbu guards couldn't hold in their laughs and started laughing at the old man who was fuming. This isn't over, brat. It would be wise if you didn't make me one of your enemies. Danzo said to the child who smirked at him. It would be wise if you got your skin checked because last time I checked dirt looks better than you. Naruto fired back, which made everyone laugh even more at Danzo, who sulked out of the room. After a few minutes passed, Sarutobi regained his composure and looked at Naruto with a fond smile. Nice quick thinking, Naruto, but whatever you do, if you see that man and I or any of your other guardians are not around, do not go near him. If you see him and you are in the village, I want you to run and flare your chakra 5 times. Sarutobi said with steel in his voice that left no room for arguing. Hi Gigi, I will do that. Naruto responded with a thumbs up. Good, now where were we? Sarutobi said as he started to teach Naruto and his clones about the basics of paperwork. It had been 3 months since Makoto and Hitomi had started training Naruto and Hinata, and they were very impressed with their results. Naruto was naturally very good at stealth and infiltration since he lived in a forest for a large portion of his life. He was also a chakra battery, which meant that he was very good at learning ninjutsu. He was also strangely good at chakra control, which stumped the two mothers. Hinata was also improving very well. They found out that she had a very strong affinity for water, which made sense for her due to how naturally flexible she was. While she didn't have as much chakra as Naruto, she was also surprisingly good at ninjutsu. She now knew all 3 basic jutsu, along with around 5 water jutsu of varying strength. She was also learning medical ninjutsu, which she was in intern started teaching Naruto. While she took to it like a fish to water, Naruto had a little bit of trouble getting it at first, but after countless weeks of relentless practicing, he finally got the hang of it. The places where Naruto really shined were the seals that Mito was teaching him and the politics that he was learning for the Hokage. He was a once-in-a-generation prodigy when it came to the sacred art of fuinjutsu. When Mito went to measure his talent, she measured him at a 4 out of 50 in the Uzumaki seal rank list. Naruto, being the excited child he was, had proclaimed that before the exams he would be a level 50 seal sage, which made Mito laugh hysterically in his head. Right now, Naruto was sitting under a tree taking a break from his training. He was reminiscing how far he had come in his training when he remembered the first successful seal he had ever made. Flashback. Naruto was sitting on the floor of his apartment in the afternoon. He had been let out of training for the day since Yugao and Kakashi had to take a mission and Makoto had to go shopping. So he went back to the apartment and practiced his seals. Ba-chan, this is really fun, he said as he practiced his seal markings on a piece of parchment. He's picking this up quickly. It's a shame Tsunade never took the seals as much as I or her daughter did. Though even I didn't take to seals as fast as he is right now. He's only 4 and he's a novice seal maker. At this rate, he could be on the level of Minato and Kushina before he's 6, which is unheard of. Hell, he could become a master before he's 10. He might be the first person to ever reach Seal Sage since the first Uzumaki clan head over 200 years ago. Mito thought to herself as she watched her great-grandson practice his symbols with practice ease. He had been using shadow clones up to this point and they had been able to get his handwriting down to perfection. Yes, Guppy, I bet it is fun, she said to the small child from inside of his mind. After a few more minutes of practicing, he tried to make a storage scroll. He had read and been explained how they worked and wanted to try it. He started drawing the symbols on the parchment of the scroll very slowly and carefully. It took him a solid 20 minutes of slow strokes, but he had made it. After letting the ink dry, Naruto stood up and grabbed a few pillows. He then placed them onto the seals and formed the ram hansel. Fuin, he yelled, and to his amazement, the pillows disappeared into the scroll, which then immediately rolled up. Ba-chan, look. Did you see that? I did it. Yes, I did, Guppy, she said with a grandmotherly smile on her face. She looked over at Akari, who had a tear in her eye and was looking at a photo of Minato and Kushina. Mito said a silent prayer to the 2 deceased legends and sighed. Naruto was ecstatic and tried to see what else he was able to seal into the scrolls. He started grabbing pots, pans, clothing, and even some of Yugao's dirty laundry, much to the dismay of the two women that were residing in his head. He eventually sealed up the entire apartment and was quite pleased with himself. That was until he felt two large amounts of ki behind him. Naruto turned around to find two very angry siblings who had just returned from a quick mission. Kakashi then forced Naruto to not only unseal everything but also wash the dirty clothes and put everything back without the use of clones. Much to say, Naruto never sealed up anything in the apartment again. Flashback end. Naruto smirked to himself as he remembered the memory. He also then grimaced when he remembered the tough training that Yugao put him through the next morning as a punishment the next morning. Naruto, Makoto called as she waved a hand in front of his face. Naruto then snapped out of his thoughts as he looked at his trainer and mother figure. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking. What were you thinking about? She asked as she sat down next to him on the tree root. Well, I was thinking about seals. He then explained the memory to Makoto, who laughed at him, which made him blush. I would have done the same thing as Yugao and Kakashi if you had done that to me. She laughed as she ruffled the small boy's blonde hair. Hey, he said as he crossed his arms and huffed. I thought it was funny. I bet you did, Naruto, she said as she looked back at the field where his clones were practicing the jutsus from the scroll. I bet you did. The two sat there for a while in silence before the clones started dispelling. Naruto then quickly went into a lotus position so that he could sort of the memories from each clone. Over the past 3 months, both Naruto and Hinata had been slowly discovering just how useful shadow clones could be. Naruto used them to slowly read the entire Konoha library and learn all the common information that most genin ninjas learned in the 12 years they spent at the academy. Hinata, while also doing the same thing, was using her clones to practice things like Kyudo, 2 medical scrolls and teachings of 1 slug Sanin, and also politics. Naruto looked at Makoto, who was dozing off slightly, and smiled. He had grown close to his teacher and was glad that he saw her so often. Though he would miss training with his siblings or the Hyugas, Makoto was like a real mother to him. That wasn't to say that Akari wasn't also his mother. Naruto just acknowledged that she was a motherly figure. Though he found that thinking about it for too long made him sad and confused. After 20 minutes, Naruto's clones had finished displaying and he was able to sort out all the newly found skills that he had gained in the day. He opened his eyes and saw that Makoto was now totally asleep and shook her slightly. Makoto-sensei, he said quietly to the woman, who immediately opened her eyes. Oh, I must have dozed off at some point while he was dispelling his clones. She thought to herself as she sat up, but slightly winced as she grabbed her side. Ah, damn bastard. He sure hits hard. Naruto noticed this and frowned slightly. Over the past few weeks, he had noticed that his mother figure, teacher, would come to meet him at the training grounds with bags under her eyes or bruised on her face. He also noticed how sad she looked at the end of each day. He had decided, with the guidance of Akari and Mito, to leave the situation alone, but now it was obvious that something was wrong. Ba-chan, Ka-chan, what's wrong with Makoto Ka-chan? He asked the two beings in his mind. Naruto's seal. Mito looked at Akari, who was currently sighing to herself. The fox spirit knew that her son was going to ask about everything that was happening to Makoto. She just hoped that it wouldn't be this soon. What do we tell him? The legendary Uzumaki asked. Well, we can tell him how marriage works. But that could possibly lead to the, what is love? Question. She replied as she looked at her lap. I say we just tell him that Fugaku is an ass and that he beats his wife, Mito said with a growl. I think Tobirama might have had the right idea to hate Uchihas, Akari chuckled to herself, which made Mito cackle out loud. You kidding me? I agreed with him. She yelled as she continued to laugh, which made Akari sweat drop. I just learned to give them the benefit of the doubt most of the time, but yes, I hate Uchihas. They are nothing but trouble except for 4 I've met in my entire lifetime. The ages Uzumaki said. Anyway, what should we tell Naruto? Akari asked as she tried to get the conversation back on track. Just tell him she's having a rough time at home, Mito said with a wave of the hand. Alright, outside world. She's just having a rough time at him Naruto-kun, Akari repeated, which made Naruto frown. Makoto-ka-chan, are you okay? Naruto asked, much to the surprise of Makoto. Man, his sensing and observation skills are crazy. Oh well, he's been on to me for a couple of weeks now, so no harm in venting to a child. She thought as she sighed. Why don't we get some food and then I can try to explain to you what's going on in my life? She said with a sigh as she stood up and stretched. Okay, Naruto said with a smile. He didn't like seeing people he knew sad and always tried to do anything he possibly could to make them feel better. After a few minutes, Makoto took Naruto's hand and led him to a strange building with flaps and stools. The building was fairly small and radiated a strange salty smell along with the flavors of different meats being cooked. Makoto led Naruto into the building and placed him on a stool. Hello, and welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. A small girl around the age of 9 said with a wide smile on her face. She was a fairly normal-looking girl who had long flowing brown hair and black eyes. Ayame-chan, Makoto said with a warm smile on her face as Naruto tried to hide under the bar's edge. How are you? Makoto-chan, it's been a while, do you want me to get my 2 san? She asked while looking curiously at a tuft of blonde hair that was peeking out from the bar's edge. Yes please, that would be much appreciated, Makoto sighed as she rubbed Naruto's back. She knew how Naruto was around new people and how scared he could get. Man, the village really messed up this poor child. She thought sadly. Koto-chan, is that you? She looked up and smiled as she saw a large man walk from behind the back door of the ramen bar. He was a large portly man who had short brown hair wrapped in a bandana. Tuki-kun, it's been a while, she said as she looked at her old friend with a smile. Yes it has, it's been 3 years since you were last here? He asked as he leaned on the counter. Yeah, she mumbled to herself as she frowned. It's a shame that Fugaku is such an ass, he mumbled to himself, which made Makoto nod her head in agreement. While I agree with you, could you try not to curse in front of children? She asked with a sly smirk on her face. Children? I don't see any, the ramen chef said as he looked around the restaurant. Makoto then pulled Naruto into her lap and patted his head. Well, isn't this a child? She asked with a wide smile on her face. Tuki's eyes immediately widened as he looked at the blonde child in front of him. He looked him over and leaned in closely and gasped. As that, he said as he looked his old friend dead in the eyes. I can neither confirm nor deny that this is his child, she said with a wink which made the chef smirk. So the old man gave you custody to him? He asked the Uchiha matriarch, who shook her head. No, some things happened that I'm not allowed to speak about, but I'm training him and looking after him. She explained to her old teammate, who nodded his head. So Naruto, would you like some ramen? Makoto asked the small child whose head was nestled deep in her expansive G-cup chest. She giggled as she felt him remove his head and look at her with a questioning look. What's ramen? It was as if the world stopped for Tuki and Ayame, who had sprinted from the kitchen to look at the small boy. Tuki's eyes widened as he looked at his daughter and screamed at the top of his lungs. Ayame, get me a bowl of miso ramen. His daughter didn't need to be told twice as she sprinted into the kitchen to start making the bowl of ramen. Tuki then looked at Makoto, who was giggling, and smiled at her. Do you want your normal? She nodded her head, which made him smile. Alright, I'll be back. Naruto looked at Makoto and raised his eyebrow. Do you know him? He asked, which made her nod her head. Yes, we were teammates back when he used to be a ninja. We were in the Third Great Shinobi War along with Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. We were known as Team 7 until all 3 of us became Jonin. Then he took on the new Team 7, which was made up of Kakashi Hatake, Rin, though I forget her last name, and Obito Uchiha. she explained to the small boy who nodded his head in understanding. He had remembered the Hokage talking about how ninja teams worked in one of his days when he was with him. What happened to them? He then proceeded to ask. You can ask Kakashi about that, it's not my place to ask about his teammates, she said as she looked at some of the photos on the wall. Naruto, however, could feel the sadness in her and frowned internally. Alright, so something bad must have happened. I'll have to remember to ask Ni-chan when he gets home, he thought to himself. After a few minutes of silence, Ayame and Teuchi walked out with Naruto's first bowl of ramen and placed it in front of him. Makoto then placed him back on his own stool and looked at him. Well, aren't you going to try it? She innocently asked. If he's anything like his parents, he'll be addicted the first taste he gets. The adults both inside Naruto's head and outside his head thought simultaneously as Naruto put his hands together. Itadakimasu, he said in a quiet voice as he broke his chopsticks. He then proceeded to tentatively take a noodle from the bowl and taste it. As soon as the salty noodle hit his tongue, his eyes widened and filled with stars. He then immediately began to inhale the bowl of liquid gold in front of him. Looks like we got another customer, Ayame, Teuchi said happily as he watched Naruto eat his ramen with glee. Makoto smiled at the boy and slowly ate her own bowl of shrimp ramen. She then nodded to Teuchi, who went back to start making Naruto bowl after bowl of ramen. Once Naruto placed his chopsticks down, he sighed. He had just finished his third bowl and wanted to take a small break so that he could get to the bottom of what was bugging him. So Makoto-ka-chan, are you okay? He asked as he turned to face her. She sighed and readied herself for the conversation that she was about to have. She then turned around in her seat and looked at Naruto, who had a serious look on his face. Kami, he looks just like Minato, she thought to herself as she placed down her chopsticks. Naruto, what do you know about relationships? Makoto asked the boy. Well, from what I've read, there are several different kinds of relationships. There are friends, siblings, lovers, boyfriend and girlfriend, and husband and wife. There are different emotions attached to different kinds of relationships, he said as he looked at Makoto. Wow, he's smart, she thought to herself. You are correct, Naruto, but it's a little more complicated than that. You see, I am married, but it's not by choice, she explained, which made Naruto's brows scrunch in confusion. Wait, but all the books I've read said that marriage was about love, he said to the women, who sadly smiled at him. Well, most of the time it's true. But sometimes, people get forced into things like marriages on purpose, she said as she looked at the bowl of ramen for a second. Did you get forced to marry Fugaku Uchiha? He asked Makoto, whose eyes widened. How did you know that? She asked him, which made him smile. Gigi told me to know the names of the clan heads. He walked into the office one day talking about you, but I didn't know he was talking about you at the time. He said some really mean words that Gigi told me never to say to a woman. Naruto looked down at the floor. I'm sorry, I couldn't get him to stop. Makoto then immediately pulled Naruto into a hug before he started crying. She then shushed him and rubbed his back. It's okay, baby, you didn't have to do anything, she said into his ear. But he was being mean to you and I didn't stop him. I'm sorry, please don't leave me, he said into her chest, which made her hug him harder. Oh Minato, how far this village has fallen. This poor child. Mito and Akari had chosen to just watch and listen to what was going on outside, but even they couldn't help but cry at what Naruto had said. Akari herself had taken it very hard. Oh sweetie, I won't leave you, Makoto said softly into the boy's ears as she hugged him. Why you won't? He stuttered out as he raised his head to meet her eyes. Never in a million years will I ever leave you. I'll always be with you. So will Hitomi and definitely Hinata. She'd go with you to the ends of the earth, Makoto said to the boy, who nodded his head. After taking a few minutes to calm down, she continued talking. Fugaku and I never liked each other. Well, he did, but I definitely didn't. He just wanted me as a trophy for him. Another person for his conquest, but unlike all the other girls, I didn't let him. So he used the clan to force me into a marriage with him. She said sadly as she looked at the boy who had a frown on his face. Makoto took a few minutes to compose herself and forged on. She honestly didn't know why she was saying so much to the 4-year-old, but it definitely did help. Even though I am an Uchiha, I came from a very poor family. When Fugaku's family, the main family, offered the marriage contract, they had to accept it or else they wouldn't have been able to survive. So, they accepted and I was married to him. I hate it, and I still do. The yelling, the fights, the duties, I hate it all. So why can't you leave? Naruto asked his mother figure. If you don't like it so much, why can't you leave? Well, it's a contract. A contract that says till death do us part. Unless another clan gives me refuge, then I can't leave the Uchihas. She said somberly. What about your kids? Itachi and Sasuke. Don't they see what's happening? Naruto asked with a small amount of hope in his voice. Naruto, I want you to know something, she said as she looked at him dead in the eyes. If you get into a relationship and the woman says, no, listen. No means stop immediately. If she says, no, or, stop, you stop immediately and start apologizing. She said with a fire in her eyes. She looked at him and even activated her Sharingan to enforce the seriousness of what she said. Kit, she's right. If a woman ever says, no, or, stop, you stop immediately. Do you understand? Akari yelled in his head, which made him wince. She was also purposely making his head hurt to make sure he understood the point. Hi Ka-chan. I understand, he thought to his mother, who grunted in response. Naruto, are you listening to me? Makoto asked in a dangerously low voice. Hi, Ka-chan just said the same thing and was making my head hurt. I'm sorry, but I understand what you said. He yelled, which made Makoto shut off her eyes and smile at him. Good. I'm glad you understand that, because sometimes, men don't understand that. She said quietly. 4. Naruto looked at her and sensed her chakra go cold. He then went over to Makoto and hugged her tightly. He felt her start crying into him and continued to hug her. While he wasn't that tall, he was able to hop into her lap and hug her. I just wanted a normal life. She sobbed into Naruto, who rubbed her back. He had seen Kakashi do it to Yugao after a tough mission and wanted to do the same thing. After a few minutes of her sobbing, she finally calmed down and wiped her eyes. She took a few sips from her surprisingly still hot ramen and the conversation died for a few minutes. Both went back to their food. I love them, she said quietly into her bowl. I hate how they got here, but I love them so much, but it feels like they are so far away. Itachi is always training because of his father and Sasuke, she sighed and continued to eat her comfort food. Sasuke is so much like his father. He's cold and ruthless. He's demanding and doesn't know what the word, no, is. He thinks that since he's an Uchiha he can get whatever he wants. She frowned and pulled a new bowl of ramen that Tsuki had placed on the counter towards her. It makes me so sad that I can't help them grow. I can't help them no matter how much I try, I always get yelled at. And she went silent as she ate her food. And Naruto said quietly. Fear laced in his voice. Beat me, she said quietly. For Naruto, those words rang in his head. He had been beaten so many times as a child. At the time he had no clue why, but he got horribly beaten. He remembered the times he laid broken and hurt on the streets. He felt so angry. Angry that someone would do that to someone who he thought was the kindest, sweetest person on the planet. Suddenly he felt something inside him snap. He felt a rush of power flood through him. He felt like something inside of him had broken and let loose a surge of energy. He could feel his eyes getting sharper, his teeth getting sharper, his nails getting longer and his whiskers getting darker. Makoto looked at Naruto with wide eyes as she said the chakra cloak appear around Naruto. It was red, wispy, and took the form of a fox. There were red ears and a tail formed from the bubble of chakra that surrounded the 4-year-old. Wow, that's the power of the 9 tails. Wait, shit, that's the 9 tails power. She quickly snapped out of her stupor as she recognized what was happening. Naruto, you need to calm down, Akari said from the seal. She felt the draw of her power and immediately tried to take it back, but it didn't work. I know you are upset right now, but you need to calm down. You are scaring Makoto. That seemed to get Naruto to start thinking, and he looked at a now terrified Makoto. He then tried to calm himself down and regain control of the power. After a few minutes, the cloak receded and Naruto had regained control of his chakra again. He stumbled from the stool he had been sitting on and was then caught by Makoto. Makoto Ka-chan, he whispered. Shish, it's okay, don't speak, just close your eyes, she said as she carried him. She turned to Tuki, whose eyes were wide as he looked around the shop. Luckily nothing got damaged by the insane chakra of the 9 tails. She then paid for the bowls of ramen shunshin back to the apartment that Naruto lived in. She used the key that she had been given and opened the door. Once she entered the home, she locked the door and reset the security seals that were in place. She went over to Naruto's room and sat him down. Naru-kun, she said quietly. We need to get you clean and into your sleep clothes. I need you to wake up for me for just a few minutes, she said sweetly. After getting a nod from Naruto, she then went to take off his clothing and get him bathed and changed into pajamas. Alright Naru, I'm going to go run back to my house. Do you want me to stay with you? She asked the half-asleep boy. She knew that she was going to stay with him since Kakashi and Yugao were out on a mission. Ka-chan, stay, he said softly as he slowly fell asleep on his bed. Once he said those words, any part of her that wanted her to go back to the compound was silenced. She looked in Yugao's room and picked out a pair of short shorts that barely covered half of her butt and took of her shirt, revealing a black, then used the toothbrush that she slept at the apartment whenever Kakashi and Yugao were out and brushed her teeth and put her hair into a bun. Once her hygiene was taken care of, she turned off the bathroom lights and double-checked the security seals around the house to make sure they were totally safe. Once she was totally sure that everything was in order, she walked over to Naruto's bed and got into it. Naruto immediately felt the presence of someone and tensed. Makoto felt this and rubbed his head. Don't worry Naru-kun, it's me, she whispered into his ear as she pressed him against her chest. I love you Ka-chan, he said as he finally fell asleep. Makoto let a tear fall from her face and kissed Naruto's forehead. I love you too Sochi-kun, she said as she fell into the best sleep she's ever had in her entire life. I love you so much. Hinata was terrified. Sure, she had been scared of thunder before, but right now she was terrified of what was going on outside of her window. It had started out as any normal June day. Sure, she could feel the moisture in the air, but she just thought that it was her chakra being weird. Apparently, she now had a newfound skill in predicting the weather. Hinata huddled on her bed as sheets of rain poured onto the roof for the Hyuga compound. She could see the large flashes of lightning as they streaked across the sky. She could even feel the wind every time it blew on her barely open window. After a rather loud clap of thunder, she had had enough. She scurried out of her bedroom and ran down the hallway in sheer terror. She instinctively activated her Byakugan and looked around for anywhere she could hide. Once she found where she wanted to go, she sprinted off to go hide. Living in a cave for a year taught Naruto a lot of things. It taught him how to keep his spaces clean and rodent-free, and it taught him how to function alone. But one of the most important things it taught him was the ability to sense your surroundings even when you are asleep. It took him 8 months of constant training, but he was able to sense other chakra signatures even when he isn't awake. Naruto had been blissfully asleep dreaming about ramen when he felt a small alarm bell go off in his head. He quickly sat up and looked around to see where he was. He saw that he wasn't in his apartment but then quickly remembered that he was staying at the Hyuga compound since it was their day to train him on the schedule. He rubbed his eyes and looked around to see what was wrong. Anyone awake in there? He thought as he closed his eyes to better get a sense of what was wrong. He sighed when he didn't get a response from anyone, meaning that both the entities that lived in his head were asleep. Naruto then felt Hinata's chakra and how she was in distress and was running. He opened his eyes and sprinted out of his room. Naruto channeled chakra to his eyes and activated his two-tomo Sharingan and sprinted to where Hinata was. After a few minutes of running, he found her in a long hallway hiding. He flared his chakra so that it would alert her that he was there and smiled when she bolted into his arms. Hinata-chan, what's going on? He asked quietly as he hugged the slightly shaking girl who was in his arms. The Thunder S scared me. She stuttered into his chest, which made him smile a little. You're scared? He whispered into her ear, which made the girl nod her head. Okay, well, why don't you sleep with me? I won't let the thunder hurt you. He sweetly suggested, which made her eyes widen. Really? She asked with hope in her eyes. Naruto nodded his head and smiled at her, which put her at ease slightly. He led her to the room he was sleeping in and slid open the door. He deactivated his Sharingan and closed the door. He then put Hinata down on one side of the bed and laid on the other side. When another loud clap of thunder rattled the compound, Hinata started whimpering and scooted over to Naruto, who instinctively wrapped his arms around her and released a calming aura of chakra so that they both could sleep. When morning finally came, Hitomi went to go wake up the children. She walked to Hinata's room and found that she wasn't there. She instantly started panicking and activated her Byakugan. She looked around for her daughter and found her in another room. Curious as to where she was, Hitomi walked to the door her daughter was behind. She deactivated her eyes and opened the door. She grinned at the sight that she saw. Naruto and Hinata wrap in a very close hug with Hinata's head pressed against Naruto's chest. Hitomi internally squealed kawaii and ran to get a camera. As she was running, she ran into a number of the branch family mothers and brought them along to see how cute the sleeping children were. They all went to Naruto's room and found them both still asleep. They all smiled and quietly squealed at how cute of a sight it was. Naruto opened one of his eyes and looked at the gathering of mothers and raised his eyebrow. Hitomi saw this and sweetly smiled at the boy. Naruto saw that it was time for him and Hinata to get up. He then looked down and saw that Hinata was borrowed into his arms and started to blush. I see you got a new edition last night, Naruto. Hitomi spoke with a light tone of amusement in her voice, which made Naruto blush even more. She then went over to Hinata and kissed her good morning. Feeling that someone was kissing her, Hinata opened her eyes and saw her mother leaning over her. Good morning, Ka-chan. Hinata smiled as she yawned. Good morning, Hinata. Did you have a good sleep? Her mother asked, with a smirk on her face. Hi. The small girl spoke as she tried to get up but found herself tangled. She looked down and saw that she was wrapped in Naruto's arms and went nuclear, which made Hitomi smile even wider. I think it's time for her to go get changed and clean, Naruto, Hitomi said to the equally embarrassed boy, who instantly let go of his friend who jumped off of him and ran out of his room. Hitomi smirked as she watched her daughter run back to her room. I assume she got scared and went to you last night during the storm? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. I felt that she was scared and I went to her. I found her in a hallway crying, so I let her sleep here. It happened with the animals sometimes, and it helps if they sleep with something to make them feel better. He explained to the mother, who nodded her head. Okay, just don't make this a habit. I don't know what Hiyashi would do if he heard about this happening more than once. She declared to the boy, whose face went pale, which made her laugh again. Don't worry, I won't tell him, and neither will the other mothers. You have nothing to worry about. She reassured the child, who let out a breath he didn't know he was holding in. Thank you, he whispered to the matriarch of the Hyuga clan. She smiled sweetly at the boy and then left his room. When you are ready, we will be in the dining room, she told the boy, who nodded his head. After 25 minutes, Naruto was dressed in his normal training outfit. He was wearing a pair of long black pants, and a short-sleeved blue shirt with a green spiral on the back. He looked around the room and made sure that everything was in order. Once he was sure it was, he left the room and walked to the dining room. In the 6 months that Naruto had been training, he had been at the Hyuga compound at least 3 times each week. He had grown familiar with everyone who lived there and greeted them all with smiles and waves. He continued to walk down the elegantly decorated hallways that connected the different floors and sections of the massive compound. Once he made it to the dining room, he still couldn't help but look around and gasp. There were 2 large sliding doors that opened up to a large room that looked out to a Zen garden. There were portraits of past clan heads and their families and even ancient-looking tapestries. He looked around and his eyes led to the medium-sized wooden table that had 6 chairs around it. There were 2 on each side and 1 on both of the ends of the table. Currently, 3 out of the 6 chairs were being used. Hiyashi was sitting at the head of the table looking at a few documents. Hitomi was sitting on the other end talking to one of the branch members who was going to be bringing them breakfast, and Hinata was sitting in one of the chairs that were facing Naruto. She was reading a book on anatomy. "Good morning, Hiyashi-sama," Naruto greeted as he bowed at the waist. Hiyashi looked up at the boy and smirked as he watched the son of his rival bow to him. The first time he saw Naruto, he knew that he was Minato's son. "Good morning, Naruto. How are you doing this morning?" he asked as he looked back down at the papers that he was originally reading. "I am fine this morning," the child said as he made his way to the table. He looked at his best friend and smiled at her. She smiled back but with a slight blush on her face which made Hitomi smirk. "What are you going to be doing today?" Hiyashi asked at the table, still not glancing from his papers. "Well, we have 2 months till the exams in Kiri, so I'm going to be testing their teamwork in a series of tests and exercises," Hitomi said with a smile. She looked at the 2 children and thought about how far they had come since the beginning. She had told Hiyashi about the Sandame's plan and he responded with mixed feelings. He truly cared about his daughter and was very pleased to know that she was the youngest Hyuga ever to activate the Byakugan. He was not pleased with the fact that Sarutobi wanted her and Naruto to strengthen the reputation of the village. He thought that the idea was insane, but was swayed when Hitomi told him that Hinata was able to make 165 shadow clones. He still didn't like the idea, but eventually relented and agreed. What shocked Hitomi was how on board he was with having Naruto stay at the compound so frequently. The clan was a 50-50 split when it came to Naruto. Most of the women and children found the boy to be very nice and pleasant. They even let him help them through the use of his clones. Most of the men, however, didn't like the boy at all. Even after the support of both Hazashi and Hisashi, they didn't like him. Hazashi himself went out to say that he wouldn't know what would have happened had Naruto not stopped the Cloud Nin that had taken Hinata, but it still didn't help. "That sounds like a great idea," Hiyashi said as he moved his documents to make room for the breakfast that one of the branch members brought out. It consisted of eggs, toast, porridge, and a few sausage links. "I'm going to send my clones to Jiji-sensei since I'm his apprentice, some clones to the library, and some clones to my apartment to practice seals," Naruto said after he thanked the person who brought him his breakfast. "How is being the Hokage's apprentice, Naruto?" Hitomi asked after she swallowed her food. "It's really cool. I get to learn about how he does his job, politics, and the ins and outs of the village," Naruto explained, which made both adults nod his head. "That's interesting that he's getting you involved with politics," Hiyashi said as he thought about the implications that Sarutobi's move to make the Jinchurik his apprentice. "It's actually really interesting. Since I'm a censor, I can tell when people are lying and it helps me learn how to read people. Gigi doesn't let me talk when he's meeting with people except when people talk to me first," Naruto said, which made Hiyashi nod his head. He had seen Naruto's clones in the office numerous times and was quite impressed with the boy. "How about you, Hinata?" Naruto asked the girl who, due to being put on the spot so suddenly. Well, I may also going to send some clones to the library, but most of them will be practicing or studying. She stuttered to the group who nodded their heads. During the time that Hinata had known Naruto, her stutter had gotten much better, but she still sometimes did it out of habit but was quickly getting out of it. Very good, Hinata, I'm very proud of you for getting so good at the 2 trigrams 16 palms technique, Hiyashi said as he praised his daughter. Hitomi also smiled and nodded her head at the girl who blushed. Yeah, Hinata-chan, you're getting really good. The blonde said with a large smile on his face. But I do have a question. Oh, Hiyashi asked as he looked at the blonde. What would that be? Well, why can't other people do the palm techniques? He asked, which made Hitomi nearly choke on her food. What do you mean? Hiyashi replied as he eyed the child. Well, the technique requires for the user to hit the tenketsu point in the body right, he said as he looked at Hiyashi, who slowly nodded his head. Well, why can't other people do it as well? The Byakugan allows for us to see the points so that we can close them. The techniques require the precision of the Byakugan so that you can see what you're doing. Hitomi explained to the blonde who nodded his head. Yeah, I know that, but what if you just memorize the points in the body? He asked, which made the room go dead silent. Hitomi looked at Hiyashi for an answer but was shocked when he didn't have one right away. The man was actually intrigued by the idea of a way for you not to need the Byakugan to do the palm technique. After a few minutes of silence, Hiyashi finally answered the question. Well, Naruto, no one had actually ever thought of that before. He said as he looked at the boy. Well, he definitely got his father's ability to pick things apart. Really? He asked, which made the man nod his head. Huh, oh well, Naruto said as he went back to eating his food. After a few more minutes of eating, Hitomi called the 2 children to follow her to one of the Hyuga training grounds. Both children said goodbye to the clan head, who smiled at them and followed Hitomi. After a short walk, Hitomi walked the kids to the training ground and got them ready to train. She got them all stretched out and had them run around the field. After their 3-mile run, she had them do physical exercises. Naruto was up to 65 push-ups, and 80 sit-ups with 100 jumping jacks, while Hinata was doing 45 push-ups, 65 sit-ups, and 85 jumping jacks. Both were very physically fit 4-year-olds and were around genin level if Hitomi had to gauge their strengths. When the children concluded their warm-ups, she called them both over to the center of the grounds and smiled at them. She then took out a scroll from her pouch and smiled. All right, Naruto and Hinata, as you know, you will be participating in the Chunin exams. Meaning that you need to have some skills other than taijutsu and ninjutsu. You need actual ninja skills. She explained as she walked in front of them in a line. Today, you will be trying to get a second version of this scroll that I have hidden somewhere in the village. She said as she handed Hinata the scroll. You have 7 hours to find it, she said to the duo who nodded their heads. Good luck, she said before she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto-kun, what are we going to do? Hinata said as she looked at the scroll in her hands. Well, maybe the scroll has some instructions on it, he said as he gestured for the scroll from Hinata's hand. He then opened it and read what it said. While I may be one, the best things come in pairs. Naruto looked at the scroll and scowled at it. That doesn't make any sense at all, he shouted as he handed Hinata the scroll. She took it and then read it again. Maybe it means it's where a bunch of other scrolls are. Maybe it's at the library, she suggested to the blonde who put his hand on his chin. Yeah, you could be right, he said as he started running towards the library. He looked behind him and saw Hinata running after him. Wait, couldn't we track the scroll? Naruto suddenly stopped in the middle of the training ground. What's wrong, Naruto? Hinata asked as she looked at her friend. I have an idea, he bit his thumb and started weaving hand seals. Once he was done, he slammed his hand on the ground and shouted, summoning jutsu, kitsune. Out of the plume of smoke came a small brown fox that had black tips on its ears. It was the size of a normal house cat and walked over to Naruto. "Hey, Naru-chan," she said as she licked the boy's face. "Hey, Fima-chan," Naruto called to the fox, who yipped in excitement. "We need your help." "What do you need help with?" the fox asked as she looked between Naruto and Hinata. "Is it possible that you can track the scent off of this scroll?" he asked the fox, who nodded its head. Hinata instantly knew what he was trying to do. Instead of going in blindly to a location that they had a hunch the scroll would be, they would use the fox to track the scent of the scroll and find it that way. Hinata looked at Naruto and smiled at him. "Good idea, Naruto-kun." She complimented the boy, who smiled back. "Thanks, Hinata," he yelled as he held out the scroll for the fox to smell. "I have a scent that leads this way," Fima said as she pointed in the direction towards the center of Konoha. "All right, let's go find that scroll," Naruto shouted as the trio ran towards the center of town. Fima led the trio all over Konoha, as they tried to find this scroll. She led them through the market, through the park, and even in and out of a few shops. They got strange looks from villagers, and it seemed that some of the shinobi were laughing at them. After 3 hours, they finally came to a dead end in a back alley. "I'm sorry, Naru, but the trail ends here," Fima said as she lowered her head. "It's okay, Fima-chan, you tried your best," Hinata said to the fox as she petted her head. "Yeah, you can go back home now, we'll figure something out," Naruto told the fox, who yipped and left. Maybe it's not visible," Hinata said as she activated her Byakugan to try and find the scroll. "I wish I could help, but I'm not supposed to use my eyes in public unless it's an emergency," Naruto said as he looked down. "It's okay because I found something that might be helpful," Hinata said as she walked over to a brick that was misplaced on a wall. She then proceeds to pull it out, revealing a small scroll tucked away. "Hinata, you found it," Naruto said as he hugged the girl, who smiled back. He then grabbed the scroll and read its contents. "Good job, now all you need to do is return to the place you started from. Don't forget to take this as proof. It looks like all we need to do now is go back home," Naruto explained to Hinata, who nodded her head. The duo then proceeded to start their walk towards the Hyuga compound when Naruto felt something off. He grabbed Hinata's hand and lightly squeezed it. "Naruto, what's wrong?" she whispered to her friend. "Someone is following us," he whispered back to her, and she nodded her head. "What should we do?" she asked. She didn't want to start a fight in such a crowded area. "Follow me." He then started walking towards an empty training ground. They both then walked out into the middle and stopped. "You can come out now, we know you are there," Naruto shouted to seemingly no one. He looked around and felt a single chakra signature. Suddenly, a figure dressed in all black wearing a rabbit mask appeared in the field in front of Naruto and Hinata. "Hand me the scroll or you die," the figure said as they released a bit of ki. Hinata whispered, "Kai," which released her bow and quiver that had 25 arrows. She had a medium-sized wooden bow that had a slight indent in the center for her hand. Her quiver was strapped across her torso. She pulled out an arrow and readied to shoot it. Naruto stood in front of Hinata and moved his left foot behind him. He then lifted his arms up and narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Naruto asked as he looked around his surroundings to get a feel for the area. There were very few trees and was mostly a wide open field. He cursed silently but did wonder why the two voices in his head were quiet. "Naru, this is a mission. We aren't gonna help you unless we think it's necessary," Akari said to the boy, who nodded his head in understanding. "If you will not hand over the scroll, then you will be forced to." The figure then took off towards the duo. Naruto started sprinting towards the figure and threw a right punch to the figure's stomach. While Naruto was running, Hinata shot an arrow at the figure. The arrow was heading right towards Naruto, but at the last second Naruto felt the arrow coming due to his whiskers and moved his head. The figure, not expecting Naruto to suddenly move, had to dodge the arrow as well. They were able to dodge but were then hit in the knee by a kick from Naruto. Naruto then proceeded to land a punch in the right rib and then did a dropkick to get some distance. He then started going through hand seals. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Naruto launched several fireballs towards the figure who was able to dodge them all. When they landed they had to dodge an arrow from Hinata but were hit by a palm strike to the arm. What hit me? They thought to themselves as they turned around. They then saw that there was a clone of Hinata behind them. Shit. They thought as they tried to avoid both arrows and palm strikes from Hinata and her clone. Lightning style. Thunder rain. Naruto launched several lightning bolts at the attacker who was starting to get overwhelmed by the attack from the two children. They were able to dispel the clone of Hinata but were shot in the upper arm by an arrow. Seeing that her attacker was distracted, Hinata sprinted and got ready to do a palm strike when she felt the attacker grab her. The attacker looked at Naruto and held a kunai at Hinata's neck. Hand me the scroll or she dies. Naruto was freaking out. He didn't know what to do because all he had was one single shuriken and a kunai. He knew he couldn't throw it at the attacker because there was a chance that it could hit Hinata. What can I do? I wish there was a way I could get behind her. Wait, the fourth Hokage was able to teleport with a kunai that he threw. What if I threw the shuriken and substituted myself with it? That could work. Naruto grabbed the shuriken and threw it. He aimed for the attacker's head. When the attacker saw the shuriken heading for their head, they moved their head out of the way. Is that all you've got? They called out to Naruto but then they looked closer and saw that Naruto was gone. I think I'm done, but so are you. The attacker turned their head and saw that Naruto had a kunai pointed directly at the swell of their back. He substituted with the shuriken so that he could get behind me. The kunai would stable me in the spine and cripple me. Wow. They both did fantastic jobs. Good job guys. The attacker said as they let go of Hinata. Once Hinata was out of the figure's grasp, they lifted up the mask to reveal a smiling Hitomi. You both did a fantastic job and should be proud of what you both were able to accomplish. She smiled at the two children who looked at her with confusion written on their faces. So that was you? Naruto shouted, which made her giggle. Yes, it was me. If you're wondering how you didn't recognize my chakra, it because of a special seal a friend of mine made for me years ago. She explained, which made Naruto nod. I am sorry I shot you Ka-chan, Hinata said as she lowered her head. Oh sweetie, it's okay. You didn't know it was me. You did a fantastic job. Hitomi sweetly praised Hinata and kissed her on the forehead. How about we all go home and get some dinner? I heard there might be ramen there. She smiled as she watched Naruto's eyes widen with stars in them. The trio walked over to the Hyuga compound and got ready for dinner, which was ramen and for dessert cinnamon buns. Once dinner was over, Naruto and Hinata both sat down and meditated so that they could dispel their clones. After the clones were all dispelled, Naruto felt Kakashi and Yugao's chakra enter his range and smiled. Hey, Nei-chan, Naruto shouted as he ran up to Yugao, who giggled and hugged her brother tightly. Hi Naru, how was training? She asked the blonde, who smiled back at her. Naruto is doing very well and his teamwork with Hinata is spectacular, Hitomi replied to the blonde as she walked up to the Anbu agent. That's wonderful. She let go of Naruto and the three of them walked over to Kakashi, who also hugged Naruto. Yugao turned to look at Hitomi and smiled fondly. Do you think they will be ready for the test in a few weeks? She quietly asked the mother, who smirked. They'll be fine, Hitomi said as she took one last glance at the smiling blonde ball of sunshine that was talking to Kakashi. They'll do just fine.